All right, welcome everybody. Todd Kolb with US Golf TV and VLS Golf. We are excited about this morning. First of all, hey, if you're in there right now, if you're with us, can you do us a favor? Give us a little thumbs up in the chat that you can hear me, that the audio is good, that the video is good. Just, hey, we're live. So this is part of the beauty of doing live. So give us a thumbs up in the chat. We got Nick behind the camera right here. Nick, give him a thumbs up. Let him know you're here. Today we're talking about really the three things that I see that the most common mistakes that golfers make in the backswing. And the truth of the matter is in all the coaching that we do, the vast majority of it, the mistakes that are made happen in the first couple feet of the backswing. So if we can get that correct, you're going to be off and running. So I got three things that I really want to focus on here today that I think are going to really help you out. So the favorite question we love to ask is, where are you from? Put that in the chat right now. Where are you from? We've got people from Australia. I think Wayne is from Australia. Okay. It is early in the morning. Okay. It is like 3:30 in the morning. We got Gene from Texas. Welcome to you, Gene. Anybody else, if you don't mind throwing it in the chat, where you're from and what are some of the questions? We've got topics we're going to talk about here today. But this is your time. This is your time to ask any question you want. And we're going to dive into that and get it going. So, all right, give me some thumbs up. Can you hear me okay? Are we rocking and rolling, everybody? Okay, Nick's giving me the thumbs up. We got Tennessee. Welcome to you, John from Tennessee. We got Vermont. We got people logging in from all over. All right, hey, let's get rocking and rolling. All right, so first of all, I'm going to bust out here and do a little demonstration. This is my handy dandy 2-iron. How many of you out there have a 2-iron? This 2-iron, this is just for show, folks. I don't know if I could hit this thing if I tried to. Hitting a 2-iron is really difficult, maybe off the tee, but I'm going to use it today to demonstrate. I like to keep it around the office because it reminds me of how difficult and challenging this game can be at times to hit that darn ball in the center of the face. So here we go. The first thing I want to talk about, the most common mistake that golfers make in the takeaway, is to rotate the club face open. So let's go through that. This is one of the cornerstones of what we've got. All right, hey, look, Nick, we got people coming from San Diego. We got people from Scotland, PA, California, all over. All right, so the first thing we want to talk about is when we take the club away from the golf ball. This is one of the cornerstones of the vertical line swing. When they take the club away from the golf ball, the most common mistake that I see golfers make is they rotate the club face open. So let me first of all go through the different positions. So this would be open, and we're talking about the face right here, this leading edge right there, okay? Rotates open. Now, how might I know if I'm a golfer who rotates the club face open? Well, if you struggle with distance with your irons, you don't hit them very far. If you very seldom take a divot, okay, and for those of you who tend to come over the top, those would be some of the telltale signs that you might be rotating the club face open in the takeaway. Really high ball flight, no real compression, okay, and some lack of distance. All right, so that would be open. Closed, okay, would look like this, where the club face was rotated down this way. This would be closed. Now, we see this sometimes when people have a really strong grip. How would you know if your club face is prone to being too closed? Well, really low ball flight. Generally, you'll take some bigger divots. You probably like your 9-iron and your wedge more so than you like your 4-iron or your 5-iron or your 6-iron. Okay, that would be some of the telltale signs. Now, where do we want it to be? Well, we talk about this in the book, The Bad Lie, that we want the club face to be what we would call neutral. So this would be neutral right here. This would be neutral. This would be open. This would be closed. Okay, so this leading edge right here, okay, as a general guideline, should be at roughly around a 45-degree angle. So this would be straight up and down. Okay, this might be 90, let's say. This might be 0, closed, open. Square would be about halfway in between it, or about a 45-degree angle. Make sense? Okay, making a little bit of sense over there? Okay, good. I'm going to go ahead and bear with me. I'm just going to move this over here a little bit. My man Nick there, so I can see, because I got to be able to see your comments over here so we can answer those, all right? Okay, so now let's talk about how we get the club into that position. How do we get the club in that position? So here we go. Let me grab a golf glove. We can do this a couple different ways, how you can check this. All right, so on my golf glove, of course, I've got some knuckles right here in the top. 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? So when I take that club away, all right now as I'm setting here, my handy dandy 2-iron, pretty much just for looks. But when I look down on my hand right now, on my lead hand, which is my left hand, right here, okay? I'm looking down at my left hand. Now, you know, in the vertical line swing, all right, we like a slightly stronger grip, which is a little bit more this way. This would be strong. This would be weak. And we're not here to talk about the grip, although if you got questions, put them in the chat. We'll answer them later. But we like a slightly neutral to stronger grip. So when you look down at your hands, let's say you see 2 knuckles, okay? 2 to 2.5 knuckles, all right? When you take the club away and your hands are at about waist high, you want to look down and you should see about the same number of knuckles. So when I'm set in here, I see about 2.5 knuckles. When I take it where my hands are waist high and I look, I see about 2.5 knuckles. If I see 4, that club face is open. See that? If I saw 0 or 1, that club face is closed. So that would be the first way that you could check that. Pretty simple, right? So let's talk about what we've learned. All right, and then we're going to talk about the next thing. And the third one we're going to talk about here has to do with the pivot, which is my favorite, one of our favorite things to teach here, right, Nick? Come on, Nick, you like to that? Okay, Nick loves editing videos on the pivot. So that's the first one. Club face gets too far open. So we've learned that if it's open, you probably hit a really high ball flight. Don't take much for divot. You don't really compress the golf ball. If it's too closed, you probably hit a really low ball flight. You may take big divots. You really struggle with a 5-iron and a 6-iron, but you might love your 9-irons and wedges. And then, of course, neutral is at about a 45-degree angle, and we can swing it back where that we see the same number of knuckles there. All right, now let's move into the second one. The second common mistake that I see, and believe it or not, I know it sounds crazy, but if you can teach the first 3-4 feet of the golf swing right here, you could give probably 90% of the lessons that we give here. The second thing that I see is when the club face or the club drags too far inside. When the club or club face drags too far inside. So let's talk about that. All right, let's talk about what that looks like. So here we go. I'm going to grab one of my VLS alignment rods. I'm just going to put her down right here. Everybody can kind of see that there, right? Okay. Like I said earlier, don't be afraid to ask any questions. There's no dumb questions here. One of the things that we really believe a lot here at US Golf TV and VLS Golf is that mostly traditional instruction, albeit good instruction, is probably not geared for the average person. And some of the questions that you're thinking about right now, I guarantee somebody else here is also thinking about. So don't be afraid to put those in there. All right, so here we go. When we're set in there, when we swing the club, watch the club head again. If the club head, the most common mistake, one of the common mistakes that we see is the club head drags too far inside. See that? Boom, in here. Now what happens is that when the club head goes too far inside, all right, we're very prone to hitting too far behind the golf ball. Okay, not all the time. It's very evident in chipping. We've done a ton of videos on chipping. When you drag the club too far inside, you definitely start hitting behind it. But when you're set in here, you want to feel like the club head stays outside your hands. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, when I take this club head away, I want you to watch the relationship between the club head and my hands. Okay? Watch the relationship between my club head and my hands. All right, so here we go. When we swing it back, notice how my hands are in, and the club head is out. Everybody see that? Hands in, club head out. If I roll the club face too far inside, now the club is in and my hands are out. This is disastrous, okay, for most golfers. Now, there's always exceptions. There's always exceptions. There was one guy who won a couple U.S. Opens. He did that. You might have heard of him, okay? We'll talk about his name in just a little bit later here, okay? But he did that. We're not doing that, okay? So here we go. When we're set in there, I want the club head to stay outside the hands. Everybody see that? Okay. Now, how can you do that? How can you guarantee it's going to happen? Well, let's go back to the glove. Remember we talked about seeing those couple knuckles? Okay. So when I'm set in here, if I take the logo, like this logo right here, what's one? Okay, this is from one of the courses we had down in Arizona. Anyhow, doesn't matter. Let's say it says Titleist on it, whatever glove you use, doesn't matter. If I take that Titleist logo and I keep that logo looking at the target line, which is the wall there, the club head stays out in front. Everybody see that? Let me do it from face on. So when I keep the logo looking at the wall, see that? The club head stays in a good position. If the logo rotates towards the sky, see that? See how the logo rotates to the sky? Then the club's going to drag inside. This is what it looks like down the line. This would be correct. Logo stays looking at the wall in front of me. Logo starts rotating towards the sky. Club drags inside. What also happens to the club face there? Can anybody see that? Rotates open, doesn't it? All right, so let's talk about this, because this is, I can't emphasize it enough. If you get this first move away from the golf ball dialed in and correct, and you can practice this at home, in your living room, at the office, in the garage, you don't need even to make a full swing. But if you get this part right, man, you got a good chance of hitting good golf shots. So when we're set in there, we're going to keep the club face square, 45-degree angle. See that? And we're going to keep the club head outside the hand slightly. These are all concepts we talk about in the book, The Bad Lie, all the stuff that's already in there. All right, now let's move on to the third thing. Now, the third most common mistake I see is what we call the reverse pivot. And we talk a lot about the pivot here at VLS Golf. All right, we talk a lot about the pivot. Matter of fact, it's one of the things we're going to talk about even tonight. We do these Academy Lives. We do YouTube Live right now. This is awesome. It's a favorite part of our job, is interacting with you and hearing the questions and the feedback so we can understand what it is we want to talk about. But also on Tuesday nights, we do an Academy Live for those people who are part of our Academy, where you get all of our content and all of our stuff. It's a smaller, intimate group, and we really engage people and we ask all types of questions. We got that going on tonight. Nick can probably put some stuff in there if you're interested. But the reverse pivot, the reverse pivot is the third thing that I see. What is a reverse pivot, first of all? Because we get a lot of questions about the pivot. So here we go. I got my alignment rod. I'm just going to put it right here in the middle of my stance. Okay? All right. A reverse pivot is when the club and the arms go one direction and the weight or the pressure goes the other direction. Let me say that again. A reverse pivot is when the arms and club go one direction and the weight goes the other direction. So this is the most common one. Arms and club start going back, weight starts going forward. See that? This would be reverse pivot. Arms and clubs back, weight forward. Down the line would look like this. Arms and club going towards you, towards the camera, weight going towards the wall. See that? And you can see what happens to my head too, right? So what happens is when we reverse pivot in the takeaway, now my weight's too far forward and the club's here. Okay, the only way now to get that club back is to then reverse that cycle, which is arms go forward, weight goes back. How many of you seen this? Huh? How many of you ever done this? Come on. We've all done that at some point, right? You hit the shot, your weight's on your back foot. People will say, you know, geez, Mark or John or whoever, you're not getting through the golf ball. Well, the reason you're not getting through the golf ball is because you never got behind the golf ball. You got to get behind the golf ball. And you know, in the vertical line swing, one of the most important things is proper weight shift. It's one of the components to creating power and speed. It's one of the assets that are available to us no matter how young or old we are. Okay, and at some point, Nick, maybe we should talk about, maybe not today, we can talk about later, I don't know, but talk about the power sources, like how do we create club head speed? You know, there's 3 ways to create club head speed. Sorry, I'm going off a little bit of a tangent here, but there's rotation, okay, there's vertical, up and down, and then there's pivot, side to side. And the pivot, the side to side, is one of the most important concepts to learn and understand as we get older because it's a power source for us. So when the weight goes forward and the arms go back, then I'm going to reverse that on the forward swing. Okay, so that's why we teach the 60-40, right? How many of you, you've heard of the 60-40, right? Probably at nauseum. Nick's like, oh my God, you can talk about that damn 60-40 again? Come on, Kolb, that's enough. So, but we teach the 60-40, 60% weight on the lead foot, 40% on the trail, precisely for that reason. So that early in the takeaway, as the arms and club are going away from the target, your weight is also going into your trail foot. And I'm going to give you a drill for this. It's a drill. I give this drill all the time. Once I start talking about it, you're going to be like, oh my God, here he goes with this drill again, right? So 60, 40. And as the club works away from the target, the weight goes towards the trail foot. Okay? And one of the things that you want to understand is that the vast majority of the time, the weight on your feet should be moving in the same direction as the club does. Let me say that again. One of the things you need to understand is that the movement of the club should mirror the movement of the weight on your feet. So when the club moves to your trail foot, the weight goes to your trail foot. See that? And when the club goes towards the target, your weight should go towards the target or towards your lead foot. Okay, so the reverse pivot is the third thing that we have. So we've talked about an open club face, rotating it open. Not good. We can fix that though by, I see two knuckles, I see two knuckles. We've talked about the club dragging inside. Not a good thing. So we can talk about the logo stays looking at the target or at the wall. We've talked about the reverse pivot. When the arms and club go away from the target and the weight goes towards the target, this is a problem. So how do I do that? I get the arms and club going away. I get my weight going towards my trail foot. Now, what's the drill? What do you think the drill is? A right-left drill. We talked about it last week when we went live. We talked about it last week. We're talking about it again. Why? Because when the club is in continuous motion, the body naturally synchronizes with the golf club. I don't think in my 30 years of coaching golf, when I've done the right-left drill, I've ever seen somebody do this. I don't even know if I can do it. Okay. Okay, well, first of all, I'm going to get dizzy. I'm going to fall over. Okay, Nick's laughing at me over there. All right. So the right-left drill, which is simply, for those of you who've never heard it or seen it, when we swing the club to the right, for a right-handed golfer, and the club to the right, weight goes to the right foot. When I swing it to the left, weight goes to the left foot. And I just do a continuous motion, 3 of them. Not fast, but continuous. And I just say to myself, right, left, right, left, right, left. And when I do that, my body gets moving and synchronizes with the golf club. Okay, hey, that's enough chatter out of me for a while there. That's a little bit talking about some different stuff. Let's get into some questions. I really appreciate you throwing those questions in there. Nick, give me a question. What do we got?
You bet. You answered a few of them, so I got to shuffle real quick. But Paul asked, how does he stop looking up at impact?
Okay, so the question is, thank you, Paul, for that. Paul, where are you from, my friend? Put it in the chat. We love hearing where you're from. We appreciate you. The question that Paul asked, which is a lot of people struggle, how do I quit pulling up or looking up at impact? Okay. Now, generally what happens at impact is a byproduct of something that happened before. Now, obviously, impact is people would say it's the most important position in golf. I mean, there's some argument to that, of course, because that's when we strike the golf ball. But generally, at that moment of time, that's all. The impact position is a result of other things that have already happened. So one of the things that I would look at, all right, would be the direction of your swing. Lots of times when people stand up, that's kind of what Paul's saying, is like, how could I keep my head, my body from standing up? I think that's what you're saying there, Paul. If not, let us know. But you're saying, how do I quit from doing this? Well, if the club is too far low and around, okay, it'll tend to bottom out behind the, see where it wants to bottom out? When I'm really low and around, it wants to hit the ground back here. Well, the ball's over here. The ball's over here, right? So that's not going to work. So what do we start to do? Well, we try to get the club to hit down where the ball's at. So by standing up, that helps kick the club out. So the first place that I would start, Paul, would be I would look at the direction of your lead arm. When you swing the club back, okay, one of the cornerstones of the vertical line swing is that the lead arm works back and the lead arm works up. The lead arm works back and the lead arm works up. Matter of fact, there's 8 words that describe the golf swing. We talked about them last week in the live session. If you know those and you put those in the chat, 8 words, you put those in the chat, we're going to get, Nick, we'll give them something for free, right? We'll get a hold of you. I don't know if anybody's going to get that. We'll talk about it later if you don't get it. But we described the golf swing in 8 words last week in the live session. All right, what else we got?
Colin asks one of our favorite questions. How do you shift the weight to the back foot without swaying?
Okay, I love this question. Colin, thank you for asking this. I don't know where you're from, Colin, but I appreciate you asking that question. All right, is how do I shift my weight to my trail foot without swaying? We get this all the time. Okay, I love this question. This is a sway. A sway is when the weight goes to one foot. It could go to either foot. You could sway both directions. Okay, but watch my feet. This is a sway. It's a sway not because I'm shifting weight. It's a sway because the weight is going to the outside of my foot. Outside of my left foot, outside of my right foot. That's a sway. This, if I take my toes and point them out, one of the things we teach, okay, this is not a sway because the weight is staying on the inside of my foot. See that? Okay, so the question is first of all, that's what a sway is. So how do I do that? Well, I think a lot of it has to do with flexibility. All right, people who are really flexible can probably keep their toes pretty straight ahead and can maybe even keep their knees flexed and turn and rotate and not sway. Okay, but if you don't have a lot of flexibility and your toes are straight ahead and you keep your knees bent, what's going to happen is the momentum is just going to take you to the outside of the foot. So what we teach and what we believe is to take the toes and flare them. We also believe that as you rotate, you should straighten the trail leg a little bit, which allows the hips to turn and allows you to keep the weight on the inside of the foot. So when I turn, see, I turn right there, the weight's easier to stay on the inside of the foot. So what I would suggest you do is flare your toes a little bit and also make sure as you swing back, as your lead arm is tracking towards the top, you're changing knee flex where your trail leg is starting to straighten a little bit and your left knee or your lead knee is starting to bend a little bit. And that will help you keep the pressure and the weight on the inside of the foot. Really good question. Really good question. All right, Nick, what else we got? We got a couple other questions we want to get to here.
Yeah, so Nomadic No More, I believe we'll see him tonight, actually. He's asking, when does stack and tilt become a reverse pivot?
Okay, who asked this one?
Nomadic No More.
Okay.
Part of our coaching program.
All right, hey, this is a great question. I'm glad you asked this. Okay, stack and tilt. Stack and tilt is a very popular system in the golf swing. And let me start by saying this. These guys, okay, who came up with this, revolutionized golf instruction. I have a lot of respect for these guys. These are two smart dudes. And they taught us as instructors a lot of things. All of us as instructors, we learn from each other, right? I mean, David Ledbetter and Jim McClain and Hank Haney and Butch Harmon and the stack and tilt guys, they taught us all a lot. Now, I will say this. There are some concepts in the stack and tilt that are really good. Okay, they're really good. All right, and I don't want to describe stack and tilt for them. They should describe it on your own. You can look it up online and find it out. But in essence, what it is that the weight stays pretty much forward throughout the motion. Now, I think this is a good system and can work for people who have a lot of rotation, are pretty strong and pretty athletic. There's some validity to that, especially with the irons. I'm not real sold on it personally for the driver. But I'm also not sold on it, okay, for a golfer who lacks flexibility, maybe doesn't have a lot of strength, okay, because what it does is it limits that ability to move the weight from front foot to trail foot and backwards. So I think the stack and tilt becomes a reverse pivot when too much stays forward and the head goes down and forward, okay? If you can stay relatively centered and still pivot and turn, I think that's okay. So I don't know if I answered your question there, but what I'd like you to take away from that is the stack and tilt has validity to it. But one of the questions we all have to ask ourselves is, do I have the physical capability to do that and hit a golf shot? And for some people, the answer is yes. And for some people, the answer is no. Okay, hope that makes sense. All right, what else we got? Let's do one or two more questions, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap her up. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, John says that he's got a flatter backswing and draws his driver, but would like to be able to hit a fade.
Okay, so the question is that John says, hey, I got a flatter backswing. That's okay. It works. If it works for you, John, that's great. But he hits a draw. Flatter backswings can cause more of a draw ball flight. Not a bad thing, but that can happen, all right? But he'd like to a little bit of fade. So a couple things you could do. I'm going to give you two tips. All right, number one is, and I haven't really shared this a lot, so this is a good question. Everybody else pay attention. You haven't read this in a book. You've probably never seen it in any of our videos. But I picked up this tip from John up in Fargo, great instructor. And he taught me this one. This is probably 20 years ago. But basically, take the last three fingers of your lead hand. So for me, that's my left hand. My pinky, my ring finger, and my middle finger. Take those three fingers, okay, and just grip the club as tight as you can throughout the whole motion. Okay, and by gripping the club as tight as you can with your pinky, your ring finger, and your middle finger, okay, that will create some pressure, some tension in your forearm, and will help keep the club face a little bit more open. All right, so that would be tip number one. Tip number two would be to give it what we call the Arnie Palmer finish. We all love Arnold Palmer, a legend, okay, a legend. All right, but we all know when Arnie had that finish, he kind of had a slashing finish, right? And he would finish, and he kind of had that club kind of up here like this, right? We've all seen that, those famous shots where he hits it and he kind of holds it up like that. Okay, that would be the second tip I would give you, is give it the Arnold Palmer finish. Instead of rotating the club this way, see the club shaft there, give it more Arnie Palmer finish where the shaft is more here versus there, and that will help it out. All right, let's do one more question, then we got to go ahead and wrap her up.
Well, you mentioned 8 words.
Oh, yeah. Did we get anybody to do it?
I haven't had it, so I wanted to
okay.
Sure we touched on it before we wrapped
okay,
up.
we don't have any. Okay, so let me touch on that right now. So this is how we describe the golf swing in 8 words. Okay, let's go through it. You can even write this down. We want to simplify this move. All right. The arms, okay, arms take it up. Arms take it up. Body takes it around. Arms take it up. That's 4. Body takes it around. So in its most simplest form, if my arms swing the club up and my body pivots, that looks like a pretty good spot. So here we go. Arms take it up. Body takes it around. Boom. I like that spot. What do you think? Looks pretty good to you guys and gals out there? Nick gives a thumbs up. He likes that. All right. So that's how we describe the golf swing race. Hey, now next week, we're going to talk about the 3 keys to consistent contact. Today, we've talked about the 3 most common mistakes that golfers make in the takeaway. Next week, we're going to talk about the 3 keys to consistent contact. So, hey, we appreciate you logging in. We appreciate, we're going to do this again next week. Live session. All right, we're going live again next week. We got tonight, we got the Academy live. For those of you who are interested in it, I don't know, Nick, did you put some information in there? Okay, just put some information right there. If you're interested in that, you get access to all of our content. The vertical line swing, tour draw, short game. I mean, I don't know how much stuff is in there, Nick. I mean, a lot. Nick just said a lot. I agree. There's a lot of good stuff in there. So, hey, we appreciate you. Be sure to check us out at usgolftv.com. We're on social media, VLS Golf. You got it. We appreciate every one of you, and we'll see everybody next week.